"Make a wish, sweetie," Dr. Amanda Thompson said, watching her daughter's face light up through the video feed from Mars Colony 3. The small holographic cake projection flickered between them, its 6 candles casting a warm glow across Emily's beaming face. 200 million miles couldn't dim the joy in her daughter's eyes. "But Mom, you always said wishes don't work if you tell someone." Amanda laughed, fighting back tears. Missing her daughter's actual birthday party back on Earth was destroying her, but the quantum shield research couldn't wait. Humanity needed better defenses, especially with the recent tensions in the galaxy. Dr. Thompson, her assistant, Michael, appeared at the lab door, his face pale. "We're picking up some unusual readings from the outer sensor array." "Just 5 more minutes," Amanda said, not taking her eyes off Emily. "I promised her I'd." The proximity alarms screamed to life. Through the reinforced windows of the research facility, Amanda saw them. 3 massive ships breaking through Mars' thin atmosphere, their hulls bearing the distinctive crystal lattice pattern of Vraxian warships. "Emily, baby, I need you too." The connection stuttered. Emily's face froze mid-smile. "Mom, what's happening?" The alarms. Amanda's fingers flew across the console, initiating emergency protocols. "Listen carefully, sweetheart. Remember what we practiced. Go to the shelter with Mrs. Reynolds right now. Don't wait for." The first blast hit Colony 2, 6 miles south. Even at this distance, the impact made the ground shudder. Equipment crashed from shelves. Warning lights bathed the lab in crimson. "They're here," Amanda broadcast on all frequencies, knowing Earth would receive the message in 20 minutes. Too late to help. She switched back to Emily's channel. "I love you, baby. Go. Run." The second blast turned Colony 2 into a crater. Through the chaos of screaming alarms and running personnel, Amanda saw the Vraxian ships turning toward Colony 3. Their weapons charged with a sickly green glow. "All personnel to emergency stations." Colony Director Matthews' voice boomed through the speakers. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is." The world turned white. When Amanda regained consciousness, she tasted blood and dust. The lab's ceiling had partially collapsed. Emergency force fields flickered weakly, struggling to maintain what was left of the atmosphere. Through the broken windows, she saw the Vraxian ships methodically targeting residential sectors. "Michael?" she called out, crawling through the wreckage. Her assistant didn't respond. She found him beneath a fallen support beam, his eyes staring sightlessly at the red Martian sky. The emergency console still functioned, its cracked screen showing the death toll rising. Colony 2, 247 dead. Colony 3, 312 and climbing. Colony 1, 173 confirmed casualties. The Vraxian ships finished their work with mechanical precision. No wasted shots, no excessive force, just clean, efficient destruction, as if they were swatting insects rather than ending human lives. Through her pain and tears, Amanda noticed something in the rubble. A piece of Vraxian technology, probably from one of their earlier diplomatic visits. The crystalline shard hummed faintly, its internal matrix still active. She picked it up, studying its structure with new eyes. Not as a scientist seeking knowledge, but as a mother who had just lost everything. The Vraxian ships departed as quickly as they had arrived, leaving Mars colonies in ruins. They transmitted a message on all frequencies, their translator struggling to capture the condescension in their tone. This serves as notification of your species' requirement for corrective action. Your expansion ends here. Prepare your submission protocols. Further resistance will result in escalated consequences. In the remains of her lab, Dr. Amanda Thompson clutched the Vraxian crystal. Her daughter's last smile burned into her memory. She had studied their technology for years, admiring its elegance, its complexity. Now she saw only weaknesses, points of failure, ways to make it break. "Submit this," she whispered, pocketing the crystal. She began collecting every piece of alien tech she could find in the ruins, her mind already racing with possibilities. The Vraxians thought they had just demonstrated their superiority. Instead, they had given humanity's brightest minds the one thing they needed most: motivation. The aliens would learn too late that they hadn't just killed colonists. They had created something far more dangerous: humans with nothing left to lose. 23 days after the Mars attack, Dr. James Miller stood in the heart of the Rocky Mountain complex, watching fake news broadcasts scroll across his monitoring station. On screen, a carefully selected group of actors played their roles perfectly: civilians weeping in the streets, politicians calling for peace talks, military leaders discussing surrender options. "How's our broadcasting range?" he asked, running a hand through his disheveled gray hair. 3 weeks without proper sleep had earned him the nickname Mad Dog from his team, though no one dared say it to his face. "The Vraxians are picking up everything, sir," Lieutenant Sarah West reported from her communication station. "Their observation posts are particularly interested in the footage of the peace protests outside the United Nations." Miller nodded, allowing himself a grim smile. The protests were especially convincing. Hollywood's finest work, filmed on closed sets with professional actors. Every tear, every trembling voice, every call for submission had been carefully choreographed. "Dr. Thompson's team is ready for you in Lab 7. Sarah added softly. The elevator descended 30 more levels into the mountain. Miller passed hundreds of engineers and scientists, all working with the same quiet intensity. The publicly announced evacuation of Denver had actually been a cover for moving 50,000 of humanity's brightest minds underground. Lab 7's security scanner recognized him, the doors sliding open with a soft hiss. Dr. Amanda Thompson stood at the central workstation, surrounded by holographic displays showing Vraxian tech schematics. The piece of crystal she'd salvaged from Mars floated in a containment field, bathing the room in a pale blue glow. "Tell me you have something," Miller said. Amanda's eyes were ringed with exhaustion, but they burned with the same intensity he'd seen when she'd arrived from Mars. "Better than something. Watch this." She typed a command, and a frequency wave appeared on the main screen. "This is their shield harmonics. Beautiful, complex, practically impenetrable, if you're thinking like them." She typed again, and a second wave appeared. "This is an AM radio signal from 1940. Miller stepped closer. "They're similar." "Not similar. The Vraxian pattern is built on the same mathematical principle, just 1,000,000 times more complex. They developed their entire shield technology around what they thought was a perfect sequence, but they started from a flawed assumption, which is that newer automatically means better." Amanda's fingers danced across the controls. The two waves began to overlap. "Their shields are so advanced, so perfectly tuned, that they've never considered someone might attack them with primitive technology. It's like building the world's most sophisticated computer virus protection, then leaving the door unlocked." From behind them, a new voice spoke. "Can we weaponize it?" They turned to find Admiral Jessica Hayes in the doorway, her uniform bearing the newly created United Earth Defense Force insignia. She'd been overseeing the covert militarization of the civilian space fleet. "Better," Amanda replied. "We can humiliate them with it. Their own arrogance is going to be their undoing." Hayes studied the display. "How long until it's ready?" "A week for the prototype. Maybe 2 for full production." Amanda's voice hardened. "Just keep them believing we're broken until then." "Speaking of which," Miller said, checking his watch, "it's time for today's surrender broadcast. The actor playing the Secretary General is going to break down crying this time. The Vraxian psychology team says that'll reinforce their superiority complex." Hayes allowed herself a small smile. "Keep up the good work. Every Vraxian ship in the sector is watching Earth's entertainment broadcasts now. They're completely convinced we're a species on the verge of submission." As Hayes left, Miller turned back to Amanda. "How are you holding up?" She didn't answer immediately, her fingers tracing the edge of a small hologram, her daughter's last school photo. "They're so certain they know us," she said finally. "So sure they understand human psychology. They think they've seen every possible response to defeat. She looked up, and Miller saw not grief in her eyes, but something far more dangerous: purpose. They don't understand that humans don't break. We evolve. We adapt. And right now, every factory on Earth is adapting. Every scientist is evolving our technology. Every soldier is learning their weaknesses. She turned back to her work. They think this silence means submission. They're wrong. This silence is the sound of humanity holding its breath. And when we exhale, Miller asked. When we exhale, Amanda said, watching the Vraxian crystal pulse in its containment field, they'll learn why you should never mistake silence for surrender. Lieutenant Kate O'Malley wasn't supposed to be in the testing lab at 3 a.m. The night shift supervisor had ordered everyone to rest, but sleep meant dreams, and dreams meant seeing the Mars colonies burn again. Better to work. She adjusted her grandfather's antique radio, its vacuum tubes glowing softly in the dim lab. The old man had taught her everything about radio operation, insisting that analog technology would be relevant long after digital systems failed. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, he'd say, tinkering with his ham radio set. The Vraxian shield sample in the test chamber pulsed with its usual steady rhythm. Kate had been running standard analysis for weeks, bombarding it with every frequency in the modern spectrum. Nothing had worked. "What would you try, Grandpa?" she whispered, turning the radio's dial absently. Static filled the room, until something changed. The shield's pulse stuttered. Kate sat up straight, her exhaustion forgotten. "Computer, replay last 30 seconds of shield monitoring." The holographic display showed the shield's normal pattern, then a clear disruption coinciding with her radio adjustment. Her fingers trembled as she keyed the intercom. "Dr. Thompson, you need to see this." Amanda arrived within minutes, still wearing her lab coat from her own late-night work. She found Kate surrounded by ancient radio equipment borrowed from the facility's technology museum. "Watch," Kate said, tuning the radio. The AM frequency waves rippled through the air, and the shield sample flickered like a candle in the wind. Amanda's eyes widened. "Is that Armstrong modulation? Amplitude modulation? Radio technology from the 1930s. Kate's hands flew across her console, recording readings. They have no defense against it because it's too primitive to be considered a threat. It's like finding out you can defeat a quantum computer with a slingshot. Dr. Miller arrived as they were replicating the test for the 4th time. He watched the shield sample destabilize under the ancient radio waves, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Get Admiral Hayes," he ordered, "and wake up Colonel Reynolds. Tell him to bring his strike team planners." Within an hour, the lab was filled with military and scientific personnel. Kate demonstrated the effect again, explaining how different AM frequencies could potentially disrupt different aspects of Vraxian technology. Their entire defensive doctrine is built on the assumption that attacks will come from advanced energy weapons, she explained. They've evolved past the point of considering primitive wavelengths a threat. It's like they've developed immunity to every modern disease, but would still be vulnerable to the common cold. "Can they adapt?" Admiral Hayes asked. Dr. Thompson shook her head. "Not quickly. Their shield technology is fundamentally based on complex wave patterns. To defend against AM frequencies, they'd need to rebuild their entire defensive infrastructure from the ground up. It would take years. And we have every AM radio broadcast tower on Earth ready to be weaponized," Miller added. "Plus, we can build new ones faster than they can detect them. They'll be looking for power signatures from advanced weapons, while we hit them with technology so old it's new again," Kate finished. Colonel Reynolds, commander of the newly formed Strike Force Alpha, studied the data scrolling across his tablet. "How do we deliver this capability in combat? Our ships still need to get close enough to use it." "Leave that to me," Kate said. She pulled up schematics for a modified communications array. "We can disguise the AM broadcasters as standard communication equipment. By the time they realize what we're doing, their shields will already be down," Hayes finished. She turned to Reynolds. "How fast can your teams be ready? Give us the weapons, and we'll be in position within 72 hours. The stealth fleet is already at the rally points." Amanda stepped forward, her face illuminated by the pulsing shield sample. "I want to modify the frequency pattern first. Something specific." She met Hayes' questioning look. "I want to broadcast on the exact AM frequency it was playing when." She paused. "When my daughter was making her birthday wish." Hayes nodded slowly. "Poetic justice." "No," Amanda said, her voice hard. "Poetry is beautiful. This is going to be something else entirely." They thought they were punishing us, teaching us our place. She watched the shield sample flicker and fail under the simple radio waves. Instead, they're about to learn a lesson about human innovation. We don't just use technology, we understand it. And sometimes, understanding the basics is more powerful than all the advanced technology in the galaxy. Kate powered up her grandfather's radio one more time, its ancient vacuum tubes glowing like tiny stars in the darkened lab. The shield sample pulsed, stuttered, and died. "Happy birthday, Emily," Amanda whispered. "I think you just got your wish." Marcus Ghost Rodriguez floated silently in the maintenance shaft of Vraxian Outpost Stun, his advanced stealth suit mimicking the dull metal of the surrounding walls. The Vraxians had designed their station's security to stop AI infiltration and advanced cyber attacks. They hadn't counted on something as primitive as a human being physically climbing through their infrastructure. "Echo team in position," Jessica Winter's voice whispered through his neural link. The cyber warfare expert was 3 levels below with her team, ready to begin their part of Operation Lights Out. "Holding for confirmation," Marcus replied, his enhanced vision tracking the crystalline patterns of data flowing through the station's walls. The Vraxians built their computers directly into their architecture, which made them elegant, efficient, and completely vulnerable to anyone who could touch them. A maintenance drone hummed past his position, its sensors sweeping the corridor. Marcus didn't move. The drone's scanners were looking for power signatures, energy weapons, artificial life forms. They weren't designed to detect the carbon fiber weave of his suit or the analog components of his equipment. "Their arrogance is our greatest weapon," Dr. Thompson had said during the mission briefing. "They've evolved past the point of considering physical infiltration a threat. To them, it's like worrying about being attacked by stone axes." "Ghost team moving to Phase 2, Marcus broadcast. His team of 6 began crawling through the station's architecture like spiders in a crystalline web. Each carried a package of what the tech teams called retrograde infiltration devices, computer modules built using 1980s technology. "Why would ancient tech work better?" he'd asked during training. Jessica had smiled. "Because the Vraxians don't believe in looking backward. Their security is so advanced it can't recognize something this primitive as a threat. It's like having an immune system so evolved it forgets how to fight a common cold." Marcus reached the central processing node, a towering crystal spire pulsing with data streams. He pressed his hand against it, activating the neural link Dr. Thompson had designed. The station's information flow appeared in his mind like a river of light. "Ready for upload," he subvocalized. "Launching now," Jessica responded. "Keep the connection stable." Through his neural link, Marcus felt Jessica's team begin their assault. They weren't trying to hack the Vraxian systems that would have triggered defenses. Instead, they were introducing old computer viruses, modified versions of programs that had haunted Earth's networks decades ago. The Vraxian systems didn't even recognize them as threats. Their security was designed to stop quantum intrusion attacks and AI warfare. These simple, crude programs slipped through like bacteria infiltrating a body that had forgotten about basic infections. "First layer penetrated," Jessica reported, moving to Phase 3. Marcus watched through his enhanced vision as the ancient viruses spread through the crystal architecture. The station's systems tried to adapt, but they were too advanced to comprehend such primitive attacks. It was like watching a quantum supercomputer trying to understand a pocket calculator. "Signal received from Earth," his neural link reported. Dr. Thompson's package is ready for upload. Marcus smiled beneath his stealth mask. The final payload wasn't just a virus. It was Amanda Thompson's revenge, coded in her daughter's memory. A program so simple it was brilliant, designed to turn the Vraxians' own defensive grid against them. Package uploading, Jessica announced. Ghost team, prepare for extraction. The crystal spire pulsed faster as the virus spread. By the time the Vraxians realized something was wrong, it would be too late. Their own systems would be transformed into broadcast arrays, ready to transmit AM radio frequencies that would shatter their shields. All teams, confirm extraction route, Marcus ordered, already moving through the maintenance shaft. Behind him, the station's crystals began to pulse with a new rhythm, the frequency of an old birthday song, playing silently through their computer networks. Next time they check their defense grid, Jessica's voice held a hint of satisfaction. They'll find out it's been reprogrammed by technology they considered extinct. Sometimes, the old ways are the best ways. Marcus and his team slipped away as silently as they had arrived, leaving behind a station that appeared completely normal. The Vraxians wouldn't discover the truth until the human fleet arrived, broadcasting frequencies that hadn't been used in war since radio was invented. Mission accomplished, he reported as they reached their stealth ship. Tell Dr. Thompson her birthday present has been delivered. In the distance, Vraxian ships patrolled their territory, their advanced sensors scanning for threats. They would find nothing. After all, who would expect humanity to defeat the galaxy's most advanced civilization using technology from their own ancient history? The answer was simple. Anyone who understood that humans never truly forget their past. They just find new ways to use it. Lieutenant Kate O'Malley sat in the command chair of the rebuilt cargo freighter Remembrance, watching the Vraxian defense fleet through her tactical display. The enemy ships hung in space like crystal sculptures, their advanced sensors completely ignoring her vessel. After all, why would they pay attention to a simple transport ship? All stations, final check, she ordered, her grandfather's restored vacuum tube humming softly in its modified housing. The old radio equipment had been integrated into the ship's systems, disguised as standard communication gear. Engineering ready, her XO reported. AM broadcast systems at full power. They still think we're just a civilian transport running scared from Earth. Kate smiled grimly. Dozens of similar civilian ships were scattered throughout the Vraxian fleet, each carrying the same modified radio equipment. The enemy had spent weeks watching these vessels flee Earth, never suspecting they were allowing siege equipment to slip through their lines. Signal from Admiral Hayes, her communications officer announced. Operation Thunderclap is go. Colonel Reynolds' fleet will emerge from hyperspace in 3 minutes. Kate took a deep breath, remembering Dr. Thompson's words during the mission briefing. When the decoy fleet appears, they'll concentrate their shields forward. That's when we hit them from within their own formation. Sometimes the deadliest predator is the one they thought was prey. Detecting power surge from Vraxian command ships, Tactical reported. They're charging weapons. Right on schedule, Reynolds' fleet dropped out of hyperspace, a massive array of Earth's most advanced warships. The Vraxians responded immediately, their crystalline vessels realigning to face the threat. All civilian ships, this is Thunder Leader. Kate broadcast on their secure channel. Initiate broadcast sequence. Happy birthday, Emily. She pressed the activation key her grandfather had taught her to use on his old radio set. Throughout the Vraxian formation, dozens of helpless cargo ships suddenly lit up with energy signatures that made no sense to alien sensors. The frequencies they broadcast weren't advanced enough to register as weapons. The first Vraxian shield failed 30 seconds later. Multiple targets showing shield disruption, Tactical reported with barely contained excitement. Their defensive grid is trying to compensate, but it can't adapt to the frequency. Through her viewport, Kate watched crystalline warships beginning to shatter. Their own compromised defense grid was amplifying the AM radio waves, turning their shields against them. Physics didn't care how advanced their technology was. Simple wave interference worked the same way it had when her grandfather first explained it to her. Vraxian fleet launching fighters, Tactical announced. They're trying to locate the source of the disruption. Let them look, Kate replied. They're searching for energy weapons and quantum attacks. How can they find something they don't believe exists? The Vraxian fighters swept through their formation, ignoring the cargo ships completely. Their sensors were too advanced to detect the primitive radio broadcasts that were destroying their fleet. Signal from Ghost Team, communications reported. Operation Lights Out is complete. Their entire defense network is compromised. On her tactical display, Kate watched the impossible become reality. The mighty Vraxian fleet, pride of their empire, was being systematically destroyed by technology they had considered obsolete centuries ago. Their shields failed one by one, their sophisticated defensive systems useless against the simple power of amplitude modulation. This is Admiral Hayes to all Earth forces. Advance. Show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. Reynolds' fleet surged forward, their weapons finding easy targets in the now shieldless Vraxian ships. The aliens tried to return fire, but their targeting systems had been corrupted by Ghost Team's retrofitted computer viruses. They were fighting blind. Vraxian command ship is transmitting, communications announced. They're requesting terms of surrender. Kate thought of Mars, of Emily's birthday party cut short, of Dr. Thompson's quiet determination. Put me through to their command frequency. She keyed her microphone, remembering all the hours spent with her grandfather learning about radio waves and frequency modulation. The old man would have loved to see this moment. Vraxian Command, this is Lieutenant O'Malley of Earth Forces. Your request for surrender is denied. You haven't earned that right yet. She nodded to her weapons officer. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. And we've got a lot more old technology to show you. The AM frequencies continue to broadcast, shattering shields and crystal ships alike, proving that in the end, the simplest solutions were often the most devastating. Humanity hadn't just adapted, they had remembered. And memory, it turned out, was the deadliest weapon of all. High Commander Zextal of the Vraxian Empire stared at the battle footage for the 18th time, his crystalline skin dulled with stress. The human ships shouldn't have been able to appear where they did. The calculations were absolute. Their primitive hyperdrives couldn't achieve those vectors. Impossible, he muttered, watching another Vraxian battle group shatter under the humans' inexplicable attacks. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their tactics defy all strategic models. High Commander, his science advisor, Renvax, appeared in the doorway. We've completed the analysis of their attack pattern. You need to see this. The holographic display showed Earth's fleet movements over the past week. Each impossible jump, each devastating strike, painted a clear picture, one that made no sense to Vraxian military doctrine. They're not following any known strategic framework, Renvax explained, his voice trembling. They're adapting our own stolen technology, improving it in ways our scientists thought impossible. They're using principles we abandoned centuries ago because we thought they were obsolete. How? Zextal demanded. Their civilization barely understands quantum mechanics. They still use chemical rockets for planetary landing. That's what makes them so dangerous. A new voice joined them. Dr. Lyra, their chief synapsepsychologist, stepped into the command center. We've been analyzing their response patterns. They're wrong. The display shifted to show casualty reports. Zextal felt his crystalline form vibrate with discomfort at the implications. In every previous species we've encountered, Lyra continued, military losses led to predictable behavior patterns. 10% casualties typically trigger peace negotiations. 20% lead to full surrender. The humans have lost 30% of their engaged forces, Renvax noted. And they fight harder with each loss, Lyra said. Look at this footage from their latest assault. The display showed a human destroyer, heavily damaged, its hull breached in multiple sections. By all logical analysis, the crew should have abandoned ship or surrendered. Instead, they'd accelerated directly into a Vraxian cruiser, broadcasting an ancient radio signal that shattered both vessels' shields before impact. The human crew's last transmission wasn't fear or despair. It was laughter. Their response to defeat defies all psychological models, Lyra said. We thought their earlier silence indicated submission. We were wrong. They were preparing, learning, adapting. A new alert flashed across the command display. Another human fleet had appeared where it shouldn't be possible, using modified versions of Vraxian technology that somehow worked better than the originals. They're not just copying our advances, Renvax realized. They're understanding them, improving them. The humans don't just adopt technology, they internalize its principles and find new applications we never considered. Casualties are highest among our elite units, Zextol noted, scanning the latest reports. The very forces we thought would crush them most efficiently. Because they don't fight like a military, Lyra explained. They fight like their entire species is at war. Their civilian ships are weapons. Their cargo vessels are troop carriers. Even their retreat patterns are deceptions. Another alert. 3 more Vraxian outposts had gone silent. Their sophisticated defense systems, somehow corrupted by computer code so primitive it had slipped through their most advanced security. We thought we were teaching them submission, Lyra said quietly. Instead, we taught them our weaknesses. Every attack we launch shows them more about how our technology works. Every victory we achieve makes them more determined to defeat us. Zextol watched another battle group disappear from his tactical display, destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist, using principles his species had dismissed as worthless centuries ago. How do you defeat an enemy, he wondered aloud, that grows stronger from failure, that learns from defeat, that turns our own superiority against us? The answer came in the form of new alerts flooding his command screen. More human ships appearing in impossible places, more Vraxian defenses failing to primitive attacks, more elite units being destroyed by technology that should have been harmless. You don't, Lyra replied simply. We assumed they would break like every other species. Instead, we've learned the hard way. Humans don't break. They evolve. And we've just forced them to evolve faster than any species we've ever encountered. The command center's crystals hummed with a strange frequency, an old Earth radio signal, carrying the simple birthday song that had become the anthem of humanity's revenge. Admiral Sarah Blackwood stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship, Retribution, watching the crystalline spires of the Vraxian capital city glitter beneath her. The ship's advanced engines, hybrid designs combining human ingenuity with stolen Vraxian technology, hummed with power that their creators had thought impossible to achieve. They're hailing us, her communications officer reported. The High Council requests your presence for surrender negotiations. Sarah smiled, remembering the day she'd received news of the Mars attack. No, tell them if they want to discuss terms, they can come to us. Let them see what it feels like to be the ones responding to demands. Behind her, Dr. Amanda Thompson worked at a console, monitoring the modified defense grid that now protected Earth's fleet. The Vraxians' own technology, transformed by human understanding into something far more potent than its creators had imagined. Ghost Team reports all security systems are under our control, Marcus Rodriguez announced from his tactical station. Jessica's viruses have completely compromised their defense network. They couldn't attack us now even if they wanted to. Incoming transmission, communications reported. High Commander Zextol himself is requesting permission to board. Sarah exchanged glances with Amanda. Permission granted. Let's show them how humans conduct diplomacy. The Vraxian delegation arrived in their ceremonial crystalline shuttle, its once proud weapon systems rendered useless by Kate O'Malley's modified radio frequencies. They were escorted to the conference room, where Earth's representatives waited. High Commander Zextol's crystalline form seemed dulled, his usual luminescence dimmed by defeat. "We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender," he announced, his translator struggling to mask the humiliation in his tone. "No," Sarah replied calmly. "You're prepared to receive them." "There's a difference." She nodded to Amanda, who activated a holographic display. The images showed Vraxian ships being systematically dismantled by Earth engineers, their technology not just copied but improved upon. "Your first mistake," Sarah continued, "was thinking that technological superiority meant total superiority. Your second mistake was assuming that because we couldn't match your advancement, we couldn't understand it." "What are your terms?" Zextal asked, his crystalline form vibrating with suppressed emotion. Amanda stepped forward, holding up a simple vacuum tube from an old radio. "Everything. Every database, every technical schematic, every scientific principle your species has discovered. You're going to give us unrestricted access to all of it. And in return," Sarah said, "we'll show you what you could have learned from us if you'd approached Earth as equals instead of insects to be crushed. We'll show you how humans don't just use technology. We understand it, improve it, transform it." She gestured to the window, where a formation of Earth ships demonstrated maneuvers that Vraxian physics had declared impossible. "Your own scientists said those engine configurations couldn't work. We made them work better than the originals." "And if we refuse?" Zextal asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Amanda pressed a button, and the capital's defensive grid briefly flickered. "Then we demonstrate how completely we've mastered your technology. Those AM radio frequencies that shut down your shields. That was just the beginning. We're not the primitive species you thought we were. We just hadn't been properly motivated to show you our full potential." The Vraxian delegation conferred briefly, their crystalline forms catching the starlight. Finally, Zextal turned back to the humans. "We accept your terms." "Good," Sarah smiled. "Oh, and one more thing. You're going to apologize. Publicly. To every species you've ever treated the way you treated us. Starting with a formal acknowledgement of the Mars attack. You want us to admit our mistake." The concept seemed to physically pain the Vraxian commander. "No," Amanda said quietly. "We want you to admit that you didn't make a mistake. You made an enemy. And now you're going to spend the next century watching that enemy surpass everything you've achieved." She held up the radio vacuum tube again. "Sometimes the simplest technologies teach the most important lessons. Here's one you should learn. Humans don't seek revenge. We seek understanding. And once we understand something, we make it better." Sarah finished. "Welcome to humanity's version of surrender terms. Now shall we begin your education?" 6 months after the Vraxian surrender, Dr. Amanda Thompson stood in the central hall of the newly established Earth Vraxian Technology Exchange Institute. The building itself was a testament to the new era. Crystalline architecture seamlessly blended with human design elements, creating something neither species could have achieved alone. "The latest test results are in," Kate O'Malley announced, approaching with a holographic display. She traded her military uniform for the Institute's research division colors, but still wore her grandfather's old radio vacuum tube as a pendant. "The hybrid shield technology is exceeding all projections. Even the Vraxian scientists are impressed." Amanda watched a group of alien students studying an ancient AM radio set, their crystalline forms glowing with curiosity. They're finally learning to look backward to move forward. "Speaking of moving forward," Kate said softly, "the Mars Memorial is ready." The transport took them to Olympus Mons, where the rebuilt Mars Colony 3 now stood. At its center, a crystalline spire rose into the thin Martian atmosphere. But this one was different from traditional Vraxian architecture. Human engineers had modified its structure to capture and amplify radio waves from Earth, turning them into a perpetual symphony of light and sound. "Emily would have loved this," Amanda whispered, watching the crystal tower pulse with old radio frequencies. Each signal created unique patterns in the crystalline matrix, transforming Earth's broadcast history into an ever-changing memorial. Admiral Hayes joined them at the observation deck, her uniform now bearing the insignia of both Earth and the newly formed Galactic Scientific Coalition. The Vraxian High Council's representatives have arrived for the ceremony. High Commander Zextal led his delegation across the Martian surface, their crystalline forms dramatically different from 6 months ago. Regular exposure to human innovation had changed them, literally. Their matrices now displayed complex patterns that would have been considered chaotic by old Vraxian standards. "We bring news," Zextal announced as he approached. "The Coalition has approved funding for the Pioneers Initiative. Your proposal to share hybrid technology with developing species has been accepted." Amanda nodded. After the war, humanity had surprised everyone by not hoarding their technological breakthroughs. Instead, they'd established programs to help other species understand and improve upon both ancient and advanced technologies. "The galaxy's changing," Hayes observed. "More species are beginning to experiment with combining old and new technologies. The Centaurians have already developed their own version of crystal radio hybrid systems. Because we showed them a better way," Kate said. "Not just to use technology, but to understand it, to respect where it came from." The ceremony began as the sun set behind the Martian mountains. Representatives from 20 different species gathered to watch Earth's old radio signals dance through the memorial spire, creating a light show that represented the perfect blend of primitive and advanced technology. Amanda stepped up to the podium, looking out at the assembled faces, human, alien, crystalline, and everything in between. 6 months ago, they'd been enemies. Now they were students, teachers, collaborators. "Today we dedicate this memorial not just to those we lost," she began, "but to what their sacrifice taught us all." The Mars attack could have ended in simple revenge. Instead, it led to understanding. It showed us that true advancement doesn't mean abandoning our past. It means building upon it. She gestured to the spire, where an old birthday song played through the crystal matrix, creating patterns of light that danced across the Martian sky. "My daughter Emily loved both old and new technology. She would spend hours listening to her grandmother's radio stories, then use those same frequencies to communicate with friends across the solar system. She understood what we all need to remember. Innovation isn't about replacement. It's about evolution." The spire pulsed with dozens of radio frequencies now, each one contributing to the growing symphony of light. Old Earth music played alongside Vraxian harmonics, creating something entirely new. "We could have used our victory to punish," Amanda continued. "Instead, we chose to teach, to share, to grow. Because that's what humans do best. We take the lessons of the past and transform them into possibilities for the future." As night fell on Mars, the memorial spire continued its eternal broadcast, sending old radio signals dancing through advanced crystals. It stood as a reminder that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come not from discarding the past, but from understanding it in new ways. And somewhere in the harmony of ancient radio waves and crystalline technology, a little girl's birthday wish had finally come true. Not in the way anyone expected, but in a way that would change the galaxy forever.